Decadence is the anime that all Brandon Sanderson fans have been waiting for. While it is still too early to say if this series will be a masterclass of storytelling, it has so far proven itself already with incredible world building, setting up interesting characters and plot twists. And if anyone doubted that books like Mistborn or the Stormlight Archive could be given good anime adaptations, Decadence is conclusive evidence that epic fantasy and anime are a match made in heaven. And that is what I will endeavor to prove in this video today. Hello there everyone, Lars here with an anime review brought to you by Camille's Harem. Not just a podcast by novice writers for novice writers, but also a YouTube channel by novice writers for novice writers. Because writing is an adventure, it's more fun with friends. And yes, Decadence is the show that proves that anime can be a medium for telling epic fantasy and science fiction stories. Now, while many anime fans have seen some amazing stories with incredible world building, plotting, character development, and mind-bending moments, there's always some worry about adapting novels into visual storytelling. The Lord of the Rings trilogy is a wonderful example of a faithful adaptation combined with creative ingenuity on the silver screen to just produce three amazing, beautiful movies. But on the other hand, we have the Hobbit trilogy, which was made by the same people, and it is an example of how adaptation can go horribly wrong, even with the best intentions. And that is not even to mention disasters like the Eragon movie, or more recently, Mortal Engines and the especially foul Artemis Fowl. Pun definitely intended. And there are plenty of anime adaptations for well-liked manga and light novels that have unfortunately utterly fallen flat, despite the fact that the source material was incredible. I'm looking at you, Seven Deadly Sins! So, yeah, there would be a lot to be skeptical about when it comes to adapting epic fantasy for anime. Now, when we look at Decadence, the creators behind the show have already shown themselves not only competent at making an original story that is wonderfully animated, plotted, and acted, but that they can create a story that embraces the grandeur of epic fantasy. Many anime strive for these lofty heights, but fall just short due to badly executed plot twists, character arcs, or falling into tropey pitfalls. Decadence has thus far avoided these stumbling blocks, but I really want to dive into why this anime is one that fans of Brandon Sanderson will love, and why it is already a pinnacle of epic fantasy storytelling, even though as of recording this video, we are only halfway through the series. First off, Decadence balances character building, plot progression, and vast world building all at the same time. This is a very tricky juggling act to pull off. And what we see actually is that many shows use their plot or world building to frame character focus at the beginning of their run. Stories live or die by how well they make their characters, how well they're portrayed, how well do you like them, how well are they fleshed out and developed and utilized as the plot goes on. So it makes sense that a lot of shows, especially in anime, put world building and plot progression into the background until the main characters are more firmly established. Decadence, on the other hand, says, "Hold my beer and watch me do this," and develops all three at the same time. Readers of the Stormlight Archive and Elantris will immediately recognize this. You are not given a clear picture of Alethkar or the war on the Shattered Plains or the political machinations between Arelon and Fjordell right off the bat at the beginning of the book. Instead, you learn more about these things as the characters progress through their own stories. Plenty of world building and different angles to the same place, people, issues, or whatever is explored, thus providing plenty of various perspectives, which gives the audience a more organic and nuanced view into this fictional world. In Decadence, we are given glimpses of the roaming fortress Decadence itself, the world outside and the world inside of the fortress inhabited by the tankers and the gears through the eyes of Natsumi and Kaburagi, two very opposing views. And 6 episodes in, we are still learning about the complex world of Decadence with its many layers, the world of the cyborgs, Natsumi's past, the horrifying organization that is Solid Quake, and even how certain characters know Kaburagi when he is supposed to be this ancient legend. And why is Solid Quake using specifically a video game to control its populace? We don't know the truth of the world's history, and the first episode at so many points in time tells us that there is so much that we have yet to learn. And the story is moving at such an incredible pace, and every scene is so deliberate that you can bet that the bombshells that we've had so far are nothing compared to what is coming next. And here's where I find it very important to note. Epic fantasy doesn't give you the characters right out of the gate, but rather you are given enough to understand them and identify with them. Then, in the process of the story, you learn about who they were, and you get to experience them becoming someone new. Someone new by the end of the story. Epic sci-fi and fantasy are all about the journey and don't follow the normal pattern of first establishing characters and then getting along with the plot. If done right, this allows for the audience to learn more about the characters, the plot, and the world in a satisfying, logical way that usually leads to great payoff by the end. While we have yet to see how Decadence ends ultimately, and then to pass judgment on how good the story is overall, it already begs consideration by fans of the Cosmere. Take, for instance, the bizarre artistic contrast between the dirty, rough fortress world of Decadence and the luxurious world that the cyborgs live in under Solid Quake's dominion. It calls to mind the colorful and dangerous contrast of Haladrin's high politics and the Returned with their palaces in regards to the realities of their expanding empire and the dangers that poses, and the lives of the poor and the drab who have sold their breath. The great fortress's interior is also highly reminiscent of the split between the Light Eyes and the Dark Eyes within the Alethi society that we find in the Stormlight Archive. Light Eyes live lives of privilege and are considered betters in comparison to their dark-eyed counterparts, and the same goes for the Gears, who live above the Tankers. And no matter how hard the Tankers strive to survive and to prove themselves, they will always be lessers when compared to the Gears. And while the setting and monsters in Decadence are maybe more akin to Darling and the Franks and Cabaneri of the Iron Fortress, it has the same post-apocalyptic feel of Mistborn, where the world has already been destroyed once before and the main cast are living in the aftermath. But what I find especially comparable to Mistborn is the relationship between Natsumi and Kaburagi. They're basically Kelsier and Vin, but with the personalities reversed. While a lot of fun in Mistborn is the group dynamic between Kelsier's crewmates, in Decadence, the focus on Natsumi and Kaburagi's relationship allows us to dive further into who these characters are with the limited runtime that the show has. But they follow a similar path of Orphan being rescued from an old veteran mentor who is incredible at what they do and happens to find themselves also in the presence of a prodigy. The chemistry between these two is just so good and makes me wish even more for an anime adaptation of Mistborn. And while some of the action in Decadence might not be the best at times, when it is top-notch, the aerial combat is akin to the duels in Mistborn, and it just feels so uncanny to see that, and oh my gosh, it just once again makes me really want that anime adaptation of Mistborn. Sanderson, you better make it happen! But seriously, if you are a fan of Brandon Sanderson's books, you'll find a lot to enjoy in Decadence. But it's not just the similarities this anime has to some incredible books, it is how the story handles itself. The use of animation in this show is superb. The pacing and the multiple twists and turns the story takes give a fresh feeling to a show that you feel that you've seen before. In fact, because this anime knows that you are likely someone who has watched stuff like Gurren Lagann and Darling and the Franks, it dispenses with the twists about aliens, cyborgs, and monsters really fast so it can get to the heart of its story. Natsumi and Kaburagi taking on a world that is rigged against them in every single way imaginable, but still striving to change. To that end, the heartbreaking revelations at the end of episode 5 were so well done that even though I saw what was coming a mile away, I still felt that emotional sucker punch. The writers have done a phenomenal job delivering every single emotional beat that they have set up. and the world is built up so well through visual storytelling. Things in the background and quick conversations characters have with each other all add color and depth. The show is not interested in sitting you down and giving you a massive info dump. Instead, it keeps the pace nice and tight, which this show has to do because of its limited episode count, and that could become a real problem in the long run because usually epic fantasy has the time to do everything properly. But 12 episodes is very limited, and that can also dissuade casual viewers because so much information is being hurled at you so fast and in so many different ways that it can be overwhelming. That being said, though, I have enjoyed every episode thus far in Decadence. It is wonderful to see an anime be so ambitious as to tackle epic sci-fi fantasy in a short running of only 12 episodes, and so far pull it off! I like the characters, I like the crazy world of Decadence, and like I said at the beginning, it reminds me so much of other stories that I already enjoy. If Decadence can stick the landing at the end, it could become yet another example for why stories from the Cosmere should be animated rather than rely on live adaptations. Hey, Sanderson is keeping the option on the table, so I'm holding out hope. You see, the reason why I want this to happen, one of the reasons why I just look at Decadence and I say, this is how you really adapt epic fantasy for the consumers, is because animation, while costly, allows creators more faithfully to render the fantastic. Animation, especially 2D animation, immediately conveys the fantastical, removing the viewer from the realms of reality and placing them somewhere else. This medium allows the creators to capture the crazier aspects of magic or physics-defying tech, and thereby they can render eye-popping sequences. Scenarios that you thought could never be done, they are able to pull off because animation can supersede the realistic. Should Decadence prove to be a success, which I'm really hoping it is, then maybe Sanderson should get in touch with Studio Nut, because we need an anime of the Cosmere yesterday. Okay, anyway, thank you for letting me gush about this awesome show. I know I haven't said a whole lot about the plot and everything, and the characters, and honestly, that is because this is a show that I don't want to give too many spoilers for. It is so good. It is one that you need to experience for yourself. If you haven't seen it yet, go and do so. You will not regret it. And if you haven't read anything from Brandon Sanderson yet, go ahead and do that. You will not regret it. His stories are awesome, just like Decadence is awesome. And just like I highly recommend these stories, I also highly recommend that you check out our other videos and our podcast episodes found on Podbean, iTunes, and Google Play, all found under the name Camille's Harem. Why? Because they are awesome, and because especially if you are a writer looking for great writing advice, we have some of the best, especially if you feel like a novice writer and you're like, I don't know what to do. Trust me, we are there with you. That's the whole reason why we do this whole channel, why we do the podcast. Sure, we love talking about stories that we love, but we also want to invite people in on the adventure of novice writing and let them know that some of the struggles that they've been having, we've been having too, and give them advice and ways out and encouragement, because the world needs your stories. Thank you for joining us on this wonderful adventure that we call writing. And until the next video, y'all, tschüss.